All right, so you want to get Donald Trump on.
Sounds like it.
Not just, the headlines, but like the real story. How did this real estate guy become a reality TV star?
Right.
And then, like, somehow president of the United States.
It is quite the story.
It is. Well, then, you've come to the right place. We're going to deep dive into how he went from the streets of Queens all the way to the Oval Office.
And what his impact actually means right now.
Yeah, for all of us.
It's fascinating because it's not just about, like, one man's ambition.
Mm-hmm.
It's about media, personality, and how all of that collided with American culture to create a figure. Well, like no other.
Yeah, and to think this all started with a kid who was anything but quiet, right?
Far from it.
This is a guy who got sent to military school at 13.
What, for bad grades?
No, for being too assertive.
Really?
You can't make this stuff up. Seems like that foreshadowed a few things about his leadership style, don't you think?
I guess you could say that. It really makes you wonder how much that experience shaped him.
Right.
So, to really understand Trump, we got to go back to the beginning. Donald John Trump, born June 14th, 1946, in Queens, New York.
Oh.
His father, Fred Trump, was already a successful real estate developer.
Yeah, building those big housing projects, right?
Yeah.
In Brooklyn and Queens.
Exactly. So young Donald, he grows up around construction, deal-making. The whole world of real estate is his playground, basically.
But you said he wasn't exactly a model student, right?
Okay.
So what was the deal with that military school stint at, what was it, the New York Military Academy?
Well, some say it was to, instill discipline.
You needed some.
He was a kid with a ton of energy and, let's just say, a strong sense of self.
I got that.
But it's interesting, he really thrived there. Excelled in leadership roles, star athlete. The drive, the confidence, the competitive spirit, all that stuff we see later on, you can see it brewing back then.
Huh. Interesting. So after military school, he goes to Wharton School at UPenn, gets his economics degree.
It's a pretty standard path.
For a kid from a wealthy family, for sure.
Right.
But then he joins the family business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which he later renames, of course, the Trump Organization.
The Trump Organization, yeah. And that's where things start to get really interesting.
Okay. Why is that?
Because he wasn't content to just, follow in his father's footsteps.
Right.
Donald, he had much bigger ambitions. He set his sights on Manhattan.
Big leagues.
The big leagues. He wanted to make a name for himself, separate apart from his father's legacy.
And he does that, really does it in 1980 with the Grand Hyatt Hotel.
Yes, the Grand Hyatt.
This was like Trump's first major victory.
A turning point.
He took this rundown, practically forgotten Commodore Hotel, turned it into, well, this glittering, glamorous destination.
It was amazing.
What was it about this particular project, that made people really stand up and take notice?
Well, the Commodore, it was a huge gamble.
Okay.
Terrible location. Most developers wouldn't touch it. But Trump, he saw something others missed. He was willing to take a risk, put his own money on the line.
Oh.
And he negotiated this, very favorable tax abatement deal with the city.
So it was smart, too.
Oh, yeah. This wasn't just building a hotel. It was about proving he could pull off something big. Visionary,
Yeah, I see that.
That's where he solidified that image, like the daring deal maker, the guy who can make things happen that other people think are impossible.
Makes sense. And it put him on the map, right?
Oh, yeah. Not just in New York, but nationally.
So from there, it was off to the races.
Mm-hmm.
Trump Tower, casinos in Atlantic City, golf resorts popping up everywhere.
You got it. He became synonymous with luxury. This over-the-top gilded lifestyle. Captured the public imagination. He understood branding, creating a spectacle.
Okay, but it wasn't all smooth sailing, was it? The 90s hit.
Right.
And those casinos in Atlantic City, they weren't looking so hot anymore.
You're right. The bankruptcies, the setbacks, those were serious blows. But what's crucial is how he bounced back. He leveraged his brand, his name, to stay in the game.
So he turned those setbacks into opportunities.
You could say that. He used that larger-than-life persona to keep people interested.
That's when he really transitioned from businessman to like a full-blown cultural icon, right? By the 2000s, Donald Trump was everywhere. And The Apprentice.
What's The Apprentice?
That show was a phenomenon.
You were fired.
Right. Became like a catchphrase. Part of the culture.
It really did.
But the show, it did more than just entertain. It solidified this image of him as like the tough, decisive leader.
People weren't just watching a reality show. They were watching in their minds, a master executive at work.
It's like it created this aura of leadership around him.
It did. Like, he was a no-nonsense, get-things-done kind of guy.
Yeah.
And it built a brand that went way beyond TV. Books, merchandise even, and I'm not making this up.
What?
Trump steaks.
Trump steaks.
Trump steaks. This carefully crafted image, his ability to connect with audiences, it all laid the groundwork for his eventual, entry into politics.
So was politics always part of the plan? Was he just like biding his time, waiting for the right moment?
Well, he hinted at it for years. There were those whispers about presidential runs going back to the 80s.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
But it wasn't until 2015 that he really jumped in.
Right, 2015, he announced he's running for president.
And what a campaign, like nothing we'd seen before.
Totally different. Make America great again.
That slogan. Genius. So simple, yet so powerful.
Tacked into a sense of nostalgia.
Totally, like a longing for a better past.
And it resonated with a lot of people.
Yeah.
Especially those who felt forgotten, left behind by, globalization, the economy.
Absolutely.
And then there was his use of Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
He used social media like no other candidate had before him.
Bypassing all the traditional outlets, speaking directly to the people.
Love it or hate it, it was effective.
Game changer. He understood connecting with voters directly, bypassing the filters, building a movement that ultimately, propelled him to the White House.
Right.
And against all odds, he won. Defeated Hillary Clinton, became the 45th president of the United States.
And, things got interesting, to say the least.
To put it mildly, his presidency was a whirlwind. Highs and lows, policies some people loved, others, absolutely hated.
Yeah, it felt like the whole country was holding its breath for 4 years.
It was a wild ride.
So can we break that down? Like, what were some of the big, achievements from his time in office?
Okay, so domestically, you've got the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, lowered taxes a lot for corporations, individuals.
Right.
Economists still debate whether that was good or bad, but it was a major change. Then there's criminal justice reform, the First Step Act.
I remember that.
It was bipartisan, aimed at reducing mass incarceration. Even a lot of Trump's critics, they praised that one. And of course, the 3 Supreme Court justices, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett, all conservative.
Yeah, huge impact.
Shifted the balance of the court potentially for a generation.
Right. Hard to overstate how important that is. It'll affect legal decisions for, who knows how long.
For years to come, that's for sure.
And what about on the world stage? His America First policy, that was a big shift, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Decades of foreign policy basically flipped on its head.
Wow.
He pulled the U.S. out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the TPP trade deal, renegotiated NAFTA, turned it into the USMCA, and of course, withdrew from the Paris Climate Accord.
That was a controversial one.
Very. And then he goes and has these direct talks with Kim Jong-un.
The North Korean leader.
Yeah.
Oh.
No other sitting president had done that. It was a very different approach. Ruffled some feathers, for sure.
At home and abroad.
Both, definitely.
Okay, but it wasn't all policy, was it? There was just so much controversy surrounding his presidency. It felt like scandal after scandal, tweet storm after tweet storm. I mean, his handling of immigration, the border wall, the travel ban.
Right, targeting those Muslim-majority countries.
Yeah, those were all incredibly divisive.
Those were hot-button issues, for sure. Inflamed passions on both sides.
And then, his response to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of public health experts were really critical of that.
And his rhetoric on race relations, the constant use of social media to attack opponents, even people in his own party.
It just fueled the fire, didn't it?
It did. It was a period of intense polarization, and it was hard on everyone.
It really was exhausting. You'd wake up every day to some new outrage, some new crisis.
It was a turbulent time, no doubt about it. And all that tension, that division, it all kind of culminated in the 2020 election.
The rematch. Trump versus Biden.
Round 2.
And it felt like the stakes were even higher that time.
Oh, they were incredibly high. The country was already so divided. And the election itself, one of the most contentious in history.
Record voter turnout, but also all those allegations of voter fraud.
Right, from Trump and his supporters. But the courts, election officials, they rejected those claims over and over.
Which led to January 6th, the attack on the Capitol.
A dark day for American democracy. A sitting president refusing to concede, inciting his supporters to storm the Capitol. unprecedented.
Incredibly damaging, too.
It was. And then the second impeachment.
Though he was acquitted by the Senate.
Right. So he leaves office, but under this cloud of controversy.
But even out of office, it seems like his influence is still strong, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. He's a powerful force in the Republican Party. His supporters are incredibly loyal.
What is it about him that they're so drawn to?
They see him as a champion, a fighter against the establishment, someone who speaks his mind, doesn't back down.
But his critics, they see him as a threat to democracy.
Yeah, a demagogue, preying on people's fears.
That's the paradox of Donald Trump, isn't it?
It really is. He's this deeply polarizing figure. Savior to some, tyrant to others. The truth is probably somewhere in between.
But there's no question he's left his mark.
An indelible mark on American politics.
Yeah, his legacy.
That'll be debated for decades.
So where does that leave us? What's the takeaway from all this?
I think the key is this. Donald Trump, he's a product of his time. His rise to power, it reflects something deeper. Economic anxiety, cultural divides, a distrust of institutions.
And a desire for simple solutions to complex problems.
Exactly. So he didn't just appear out of nowhere. There were forces at play, creating the conditions for someone like him to emerge.
So what were those forces? What were the conditions that allowed for his rise?
Well, one major factor is economic inequality. The gap between rich and poor, it's been widening for decades.
And that's created resentment.
A lot of resentment, frustration among working-class Americans. They feel like the system is rigged against them.
Like the American dream is slipping away.
And they're looking for someone to blame.
Makes sense.
And Trump, he tapped into that anger, channeled it into a political movement. He told them he was the only one who could bring back jobs, make America great again.
And they believed him.
Especially in those areas hit hard by, manufacturing job losses. They were willing to overlook his flaws, inconsistencies, even his lies.
Because they saw him as a fighter.
A fighter, someone who would shake things up and stand up for them.
You mentioned the lies, and that makes me think about the media. How much did the changing media landscape contribute to his rise?
It was huge. Social media, the decline of traditional news, it's created this situation where misinformation spreads like wildfire.
It's like these echo chambers where people only see what confirms what they already believe.
Exactly. And that makes it so much easier to spread propaganda, conspiracy theories.
And Trump, he was a master at that.
Oh, yeah.
He bypassed the media, went straight to his supporters on Twitter, spreading falsehoods, attacking opponents.
He understood how to use social media to shape narratives, control the conversation.
It's like he created his own reality.
He did, and millions of people bought into it. That's one of the most dangerous parts of his legacy.
How so?
He normalized lying, eroded trust in institutions, made it so much harder to have a civil, productive debate about, anything important.
So where do we go from here? How do we even begin to heal the divisions he's created?
That's the million-dollar question. There's no easy answer. It's going to take work from all of us, but it starts with honest conversations.
About the challenges we face.
Right, without all the name-calling, the demonizing.
We need to listen to each other.
Try to understand where the other side is coming from, even if we don't agree. Find common ground. Focus on what unites us, not what divides us.
And be more critical of the information we consume, right?
Absolutely. Be aware of our own biases, seek out different perspectives.
And hold our leaders accountable.
Demand better from them. Insist that they, actually uphold the values of our democracy.
It's a lot to ask.
It is, but I think the future of our country depends on it.
I think you're right. The stakes are high. It really does. It feels like, I don't know, like we're at a crossroads or something.
Yeah.
To even think about moving forward, we have to, understand how we got here.
Right.
And it's not enough to just analyze Trump himself.
Yeah.
It's
bigger than that.
It is. We need to understand the bigger picture.
Yeah.
The things in society that allowed someone like him to become so influential.
You're absolutely right. Trump's rise, it's a symptom. There are these larger trends that have been reshaping America for decades.
And those trends created, the perfect environment for someone like him.
Exactly.
So what are some of those trends, the ones we need to be aware of moving forward?
Well, a big one is the decline of communities, traditional communities, and the rise of, just individualism. People aren't as connected anymore to their neighbors, churches, civic groups. It creates a sense of isolation, alienation. And
that makes people more susceptible to messages of fear and division.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they're searching for something to belong to, some identity, some purpose. And figures like Trump, they offer that, even if it's based on anger and resentment. And another trend is the erosion of trust. in institutions.
Like what?
Government, the media, experts. People have lost faith. They feel like the system is rigged, like no one's listening.
So they're more likely to embrace someone who promises to just blow it all up, even if that person doesn't actually have solutions.
That's it. Trump, he tapped into that distrust, and turned it into this powerful political force.
It's like he gave people permission to just reject facts, dismiss experts, believe whatever they wanted, even if it wasn't true.
Yeah, and that's dangerous for democracy. When people stop believing in truth, shared truth, it's impossible to have real conversations, to make good decisions.
So what can we do? How do we even start to rebuild trust? Bridge those divides, create a better way of talking about politics, having these conversations.
It's a tough one. No easy answers. It's going to take a real effort from everyone. But we have to start by, having honest conversations.
About the issues.
Yeah, about what we're facing. But without the name-calling, the demonizing, we have to be willing to actually listen to each other.
Really listen.
Try to understand where the other side is coming from, even if we don't agree. Find common ground. Focus on what unites us, not what divides us.
And we have to be more critical, right, of the information we see, we read.
Definitely. Be aware of our own biases. Look for different viewpoints.
And hold our leaders accountable.
Yes, we have to demand better from them. Insist that they, actually live up to the values of our democracy.
It's a lot.
It is, but I believe, the future of our country depends on it.
Yeah, the stakes are really high.
They are.
Well, this deep dive, it's been, really eye-opening. We didn't just talk about Donald Trump, but also, like, the forces that shaped him and the challenges, the real challenges that we're facing as a nation.
Yeah.
It's a lot to think about, but it feels important, like essential, to understand what's going on in the world today.
It is. I hope it's given our listeners something to think about, Some insight into how complicated American politics are and how important it is for all of us to, participate.
Be active citizens.
Yes, exactly. Because at the end of the day, it's up to all of us to shape the future of this country.
Whether it's having those tough conversations or holding our leaders accountable or just, being informed and engaged.
We can all make a difference.
We can. And that's a message of hope. And I think we all need that right now.
We do.
So thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back next week with another fascinating topic.
See you then.
Until then, stay curious, stay engaged, and stay hopeful.